Hi and welcome to the Evolve CEO podcast. I'm your host Greg Gillies, and this podcast is designed for high-achieving CEOs, business founders and entrepreneurs who are looking for ways to expand beyond their business accomplishments, their life and their relationships. We will be taking a deep dive into all topics relating to success, love and happiness, and we will be talking a lot around healing, alignment and manifestation, which is the key to actualizing ourselves and reaching our highest potential. Look forward to you tuning in to this week's episode. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Evolve CEO podcast. I am your host, Greg Gillies.
And I'm Tracy Gillies.
And in this podcast, we're actually going to be talking about marriage, love, partnership, love relationships, but the evolution of this relationship. Now, your love partner relationship outside of the relationship with yourself is the hardest relationship. It's the one that needs the most work. It's the most intimate. They know you more than anybody else. And we often take it for granted. We often just expect that they will understand and be there and it will just naturally grow. But statistically, a lot of marriages and a lot of relationships, they don't end up growing. They end up falling apart. So we really want to talk about growing and evolving your relationships today.
But also talking about and referencing our relationship. We've been together for 27 years. In fact, we were high school sweethearts. So, we've been through so many of the stages of a relationship. And to start with, I think relationships are much easier when there's just the two dynamic, but you put family, you put all these other demands in. And we shift and change as a person. And sometimes I think we expect the same of our relationship from the past, but that's really just not what, where it's at. So again, I guess we're going to talk about a bit about us. So we met at high school and Greg dated my best friend, but he actually dated a lot of people.
Are you really going to talk about this?
Well, that's the start of it. So he dated my best friend and he was captain of the first 15. All the girls thought he was fabulous. To be honest, I didn't really. And he actually told me at one stage that he liked me. And I said, don't like me. I've done nothing to make you like me. Stop liking me. And I think that was the big reel you in, not that was my intention. But, my mum's advice was always treat him mean and keep him keen. So
you did that.
It seemed to work. But anyway, I remember saying to my friend, would she mind if I actually dated him? They weren't seeing each other at the time, but would she mind? And I knew she felt sad, but she said, who knows, one day you might get married. And we did. So, again, our journey, we were dating 5 years, we got engaged 2 years, and then we got married.
Totally. So we're going to talk about stages of relationships. So Tracy was just really talking about our honeymoon period where we met at high school. I was just leaving high school. We dated for a while. We moved in together. We shared flats and we lived together for a period of time. Then we bought property. We invested into renovating our property. We got married. We had a beautiful home. We had everything that we wanted. But our relationship started suffering. It was kind of like we were at the back end of the honeymoon period and we were on this trajectory of creating success and what we wanted and desired and what we thought we needed to build to set ourselves up to then have children, a bit of stability and financial independence. But we actually started drifting apart. And in 2006, we actually broke up. We had a year apart from each other. I moved to another town in Christchurch and started life again. And luckily, after a year, we realized that we wanted to give it another crack. But getting back together wasn't as easy as we thought.
I think a lot of people had a lot of opinions on what was a good relationship and what wasn't. And I will admit, I don't think we treated each other right, but we didn't really treat ourselves right either. And I think from being together at such a young age, I had lots of insecurities that I think a guy showing me attention was just, okay, sure, he likes me. So, that's nice. I'll like him back. But again, as I got older, I think when we did choose to get back together, I really had that in my head that this time I actually choose it for myself. I do actually secretly think that one of the biggest things for us was moving away from all our family and friends and those kind of intertwined relationships because, you would go out drinking and kind of just go off with friends. If things got hard, I would run to my mum and dad, or I would run to friends, and, they would, maybe friendships might take my side on things. So there was an easy way out of things. Whereas when we moved, especially when we moved to Australia and we actually ended up having children, there was no one else. And I think that was really the making of our relationship, and the fact that we just had to step up for each other, and we had to work through no matter what showed up. And so for us, that was a big thing in the making of our relationship. It still is to this day, isn't it?
Totally. But it's really interesting because we talk a lot about success, love, and happiness, and how we're all here to try and create a successful life and to have the good things in life, but sometimes they can get in the road, and wanting to constantly evolve your materialistic life can put pressure on your relationship. So when Tracy and I broke up and I moved away to Christchurch and then we got back together, we decided that we're going to travel. We just went, right, this is a new start to our relationship. We're just going to put all of our material possessions into storage. We sold our property, we sold our cars, and we literally had no material possessions apart from a suitcase full of clothes. We went to Australia. We're going to travel all around Europe. And that was the best time.
Can I say, we actually had a friend in Manly that worked for the council on the chuck out, and he went around and picked up some furniture for us because we were starting again. We had put so much pride and so much emphasis on all these material things that we left behind, and it was actually really freeing to not tie ourselves to those things anymore, wasn't it? It was a really huge thing for us.
So here we are doing summer in Manly, Sydney, or the beach across freshwater Sydney, picking up couches and fridges and stuff to fill an apartment, whilst we got tens of thousands of dollars of brand new beautiful furniture and storage back in New Zealand. But we were happy. It was just me and Trace. We were together. We were having so much fun, and it was a new start to life. And we were going to travel the world. And then 6 months later, surprisingly, Tracy got pregnant. So we actually did 8 years in Sydney, had our 3 kids, and that's the next stage of a relationship and the relationship journey, right? So we go from this honeymoon period where it's quite intimate, it's very intense and sexual, and then you build this kind of connection and communication through that honeymoon period, and then you go through the marriage period, and this is where you kind of settle down more as a couple and plan out what you want for your future. And then the next period that we find for ourselves and for a lot of people, which is the most challenging period but exciting at the same time, is the parenting period. So when other little human beings come into the mix, it adds a different level of responsibility, which typically, and I'm saying typically, I'm not saying everybody, in a married relationship like Tracy and I had to double down on creating the next level of my career or my business and creating some security and some independence, because we now had to support 1, 2, then 3 children. And then Tracy become full-time mum, and she had the responsibility of all them. Now, this is what we believe the hardest period of a relationship is, because when you focus on your own lane, and the man historically, is typically focused on the career and earning the money and supporting the family, whilst if you were like Tracy and you're a stay-at-home mum, you're looking after the children. I know nowadays a lot of mums are working as well, but there's very little time left over for us as a couple. And you kind of just go, oh, we'll have more time together when the kids are older. But those compounding weeks and months and years of not putting any quality time or any emphasis in the connection and the communication in your marriage and your love relationship, it weighs on you. And people don't notice how subtle it is, that it slowly can really, really chip away, and you can start to drift apart.
Especially for a woman through that time, and pregnancies and hormones and demands and sleep deprivation and all these things. And then even that intimacy, it's really the last thing on your mind, because my body is not even really my own anymore. So, again, we've been through all those things, but sometimes I think people are expecting the same from their relationship as that pastime, and it's not. It's almost like you have to view it, and you both change, and you both have these stages in a relationship where, again, it's like becoming a mother or even a father. It does shift and change you. And I would, it would be silly to think that it didn't. So again, it's like in a relationship, there's these stages. And I think one of the biggest things would be realizing where I'm at. So I realize what needs that I have so I could meet them maybe in a different way.
Yeah. A lot of marriages, if you look statistically, a lot of marriages that end in divorce, it's typically in that parenting period, or for a lot, it's post-parenting period. Again, I'm just generalizing. It's not always the same, and things are changing. But a lot of people will stay together for the kids. And then when the kids are out of the home and out of the nest and they are young adults and they're doing their own thing, a lot of marriages will end at that point. It gets to a point where the couple don't even know each other. They've got no shared interests. They've got no shared life vision. Might have nice materialistic things. They've got the comforts of the home, and they've got the financial, I guess, independence to do what they want. But the connection, the love and connection and communication, if it hasn't had time invested in it, it fades and it becomes really, really strained.
But I think in those times, because then we're now sort of talking a little bit about parenting as well, I think in those times we kind of even don't meet our own needs. And then we're often looking like the demands and the stress builds up. But we're then looking at this person to kind of meet our needs, and then we feel resentful when they don't. But often their needs are not being met as well. So again, like, we've been through the thick of it with young kids. Wow, we had babies with colic and we had all these different things. We had 3 kids under 5. We had no family support and we were stressed out, weren't we, Greg? We did have some, there was some great moments and fun times. But I think our relationship got put on that back burner half the time. And so now, we start having date nights again. Our kids are old enough that we can kind of go out. In fact, we're about to do our first staycation soon. So again, being in these different stages of life. But we wanted to talk also about how it can be hard because this person that you're in the day-to-day with, they really heighten or show all those kind of insecurities or flaws or all of these different things. And quite often, like with Greg, he wears all the faces for me. I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but he represents so many things in my life. So again, if I'm kind of stressed or having a hard time, quite often he might end up being the brunt of it. But realistically, it would be nice to blame him for lots of things. And at times I want to do that. But again, I need to look at what that relationship really is telling me, or where am I struggling? Where are my needs not being met? Where is it really about me? Because, all the work we do with our clients, I do things like I would break negative communication lines in relationships for people, but it's never about the other person. It's always about what that person represents to you. And again, it's about working on ourselves, isn't it? That's the biggest key to relationships.
Totally. So that's a segue into how do you truly transform and take your marriage and your relationship to the next level? And it really comes down to focusing on yourself first. Everybody needs to do the inner work, right? So for myself, we had our 3 kids in Sydney. I doubled down, climbed the corporate ladder, changed industries in the GFC. I was working really hard. I was providing for my family. I was taking on all the stresses and pressures around living in Sydney, northern beaches. It was expensive. We wanted to get ahead. We wanted balance. We wanted to have it all. But I was stressed out. I was working too hard. I was sacrificing time with my family to create the wealth and the independence so that I could then have time with my family. I know a lot of driven men relate to that, but ultimately I was not being the best version of myself at home. I was bringing my stress home. I would often drink. Used to be a big drinker, and I would often use alcohol as the only way to kind of calm myself down and be present and have a conversation and a bit of fun and a bit of banter. And then I would drag Tracy into it. So for us to get any connection, it was always around alcohol. It was kind of like we become drinking buddies, and that wasn't us being our true selves. And this is so common. So many couples use alcohol as a way to connect themselves. And I'm not here to bag out alcohol, but it's because we are trying to suppress all of the stuff that's going on internally for us each, like what women go through after having children changes their body and their hormones, and they're exhausted and sleep deprivation. And then same for men. We kind of start to use something like alcohol to connect us, but it's another slow demise. It slowly broke down our relationship because there was no substance really in our relationship and our communication. It was just fun and banter and using alcohol to kind of create those feel-good hormones.
So it's kind of also like we've got two stories. It's like we're two different people through our journey that, we were those people, and again, we didn't treat ourselves very well. I know when we moved to Singapore and we got this helper, and so, we lived in a resort-style complex. It was amazing, like something out of a movie. And I thought I was going to be this amazing person, and, we both were not amazing, were we? We just brought that, can I say crap? Can I say we brought our crap just to another place? And because we weren't really working on ourselves, and then again, it's easy to look at the other person and think that they're falling short, but realistically, it's, their inner journey. And so then when we came back to Australia, I realised how unwell I actually was. And I started going, I need to fix this. And I went and did, some different healing modalities and energy work. And then I went on to study and learn stuff for myself. But again, in a relationship, we often talk about this with our clients. It's like, to change a relationship, you need to look at yourself and you need to do the inner healing work. And when we change and heal ourselves, it's like we kind of raise our energetic vibration, or we raise ourselves up. And other things either have to fall away or rise up to meet us. And I'm just lucky that Greg, you came on that journey with me. And honestly, that change in our life and going down that path was now the catalyst for so many other things, and growing together. Like, that's beautiful. Again, in a relationship, it changes. A lot of people end up growing apart, and they might separate, and then they will maybe move on to another relationship. And the statistics of the other relationship, isn't it just less and less and less as you go through? Again, because they're taking their baggage with them. So it's been like these two sides for us of this completely different journey to be where we are now.
So I'll give you my take on the Singapore thing. So Tracy and I, before we got the contract to Singapore, living in Sydney, no family, no support, 3 kids under the age of 5. Tracy had postnatal depression. None of our kids slept properly through the night. I had changed industries through redundancies, the GFC, all of that sort of stuff. I was stressed to my eyeballs. I was working really, really, really hard to continue to climb the corporate ladder, but had a lot of fear, a lot of concern around my future, because I didn't feel like I was totally in control, because I was working for big corporates and it's not always worked out in the past. Things change. So getting this contract to Singapore, it was kind of like, if we just got some help and we changed our environment and there was more opportunity and more money, everything would be okay. But what it did was it heightened what Tracy was saying. It heightened what we were avoiding. So we had more money, we had this amazing lifestyle, and we had a live-in helper that literally took care of all of the domestic chores and was a full-time babysitter. We become worse. We drank more, we partied. We were kind of like, we laugh quite often and we say ourselves and a lot of expats when they go to countries like Singapore, from not having much support in countries like Australia and New Zealand and so forth. It's like we're cashed up school kids. It's like you go back to being this excitable, having fun like you were in high school, but you've got heaps of money. And it become bad. It become to our demise. So when we came back from Singapore to Australia, it was a really, really tough transition because the contract ended. It was one of those blessings in disguise, especially for our relationship, because if we stayed over there, we would have drifted apart. We would have had all the materialistic success that you could possibly imagine, but we would have ended up proper divorce.
History would have just repeated itself. Like, as we said, when we, had all the things in New Zealand, we had this beautiful home, house. We did up a house, but we never made it a home. We kind of just didn't bring that energy or those things to it. So I think the real work started for us when we moved back to Australia and really started doing the deep work on ourselves.
So this is the key. This is the absolute key to evolving your relationship and taking your marriage and your relationship to a level that it's never been before. Now, once you've had your kids or it's post kids and you're changing to this next stage of life, especially for men, we have this worldview that it would just be like, if it was just as exciting and it was as intimate and the communication and everything like when we were first together in the honeymoon period, that would be great. But honestly, you've got to grow past that, because that early stage, the truth and the underlying stuff that each of you bring, the underlying drama that you bring to the relationship, it's all disguised. It's all disguised with an excitement and intimacy and hormones and so forth. So we come back from Singapore to Australia, and I was a wreck. I was stressed out. I was burnt out. I was drinking. I thought that I had completely failed, and I started pulling the family down. Tracy was still a wreck from postnatal depression and not looking after herself in Singapore and so forth. But as she said, she started on a journey of doing the healing, because she was always into natural therapies, and she went deep and she went fast. And because we are meant to be together, we are soulmates, we are soul partners, even though we have had a real roller coaster of our relationship. I also made the decision, after burning myself out, to go on a healing journey with Tracy. And it was probably one of the hardest points in our life, but it was the catalyst for change. That we both made the decision to work on ourselves internally, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, so that we can elevate ourselves as an individual, so that we can show up to the relationship in an elevated state. Not try and work together or get a marriage counselor to pick holes in what each other aren't doing for the other person. It was about taking 100% responsibility for us individually, going on our path, and then supporting each other to continually grow. So in the last 6 years, that's been our journey. We are constantly looking for growth and ways to evolve as an individual and bring that into our relationship. And the flow-on effect of us doing that into our children are more emotionally intelligent, they're more confident, they can see that mum and dad are real. We've got highs and lows. We don't hide it. We do apologize if we have a low period, but we're just being real and honest, but showing our children and showing ourselves and our partner that we're on a journey of healing and constant evolution.
I think sometimes we also think that this relationship should be the easiest, probably because it was to start with, and it's actually not. It's like we have so many lessons that we learn, and we actually come in, if I'm talking about soul stuff, we come in with agreements of roles that we will play for each other in lessons. And so usually they're our biggest challenge. But, even also looking at your partner in a different view, because they change, we change, and maybe it's about getting to know that relationship again from a different point and not expecting that old. But, even with friendships, we turn up to our friendship and we're fully present. And we give them that whole full dedication of, and it's amazing conversations, and we have this great connection. It's almost like I have to look at myself with our demands of our family life and all the things that we got going on. How often do I show up like that for Greg? How often do I bring that presence like I would give a friendship? And again, it's about creating that space to cultivate those things and actually let it grow and change.
Now, I want to talk about, I mentioned the word, we bring drama into a relationship. Each individual, when you come into a relationship, you've got your own past. You've got your own stuff that you carry, your belief systems, everything from your own childhood and your upbringing. And you come into a relationship and you bring the best of yourself into the relationship until you're comfortable with each other. And then when you're comfortable with each other and then arguments or fights or little things chip away, what happens is it's called the drama triangle. It's where we've never dealt with our own underlying issues, that we project them on the other person. And an example of a man is when we're first together, Tracy and I, everything is amazing and intimate, and she validates me and makes me feel special. And I feel like I feel like she's madly in love with me, because my love language was physical touch, right? So as long as we were close and intimate and had a lot of sex and so forth, I felt like our relationship was strong. But over time, that intimacy, especially when you have children, it goes down. But all I long for is that same thing. So I can get agitated and frustrated and feel like I don't have Tracy's attention, and she doesn't love me as much, or she's not intimate with me as much, and I'll project on her. And it can be a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of getting into these arguments where you're trying to offload the blame to the other person. So I really encourage everybody to research the drama triangle. So I encourage everybody to research the drama triangle because this is the underlying cause to communication breakdown, especially in marriage, is there is victim, rescuer, and persecutor. So one of the people in the relationship might feel like a victim, that they feel helpless, they feel powerless, they can't do anything right, and the other one is constantly rescuing. They're constantly looking to help them, they're constantly looking to provide advice, and when you give advice and it's not received, you get angry and you become the persecutor, and we can get into these drama triangles where we're just in this constant conflict that we don't even know that everything that causes conflict throws us into the same mix. And this is where we get into bad communication cycles that compounds over time, that a lot of people in relationships, they start to resent each other. It's kind of like the husband will come home from work and he walks into the house and then there is a drama or a conflict and it's triggering all the past stuff. And then he feels like, why did I even come home? I feel like I'm winning at work. I feel like I'm treated and respected highly at work, and then I come home and I'm just met with this energy and this resistance and these dramas and these complaints. But then on the other hand, there is the wife, right? I'll come home from work and all I can do is think about, or I'm still in my head about business, and she just wants to have me listen. So there's two sides to it. So I can only speak from the man's perspective. But for
there's
a
always
woman,
two sides. A woman just wants someone to listen. They don't want them to fix it. They just want to be heard. And again, when I do that to Greg or most males, they're used to fixing things. So they then feel like there's more responsibility put on top of them, which if they've had a day of responsibility in those things, it can then trigger that within them.
100%. So this is what we see is the number one reason why marriages break down to a point where they feel like the only option is separation and divorce. And that is because the individual is not taking responsibility for themselves. They are not looking at why they are projecting, why they are causing drama, why they are trying to rescue. For men, if our wife has got a problem, we just want to solve it. It's because we've just spent the last 20 years of our life in corporate and business becoming a problem solver. So it works in business and then we try and do it at home and it's not well received because our wife doesn't want us to solve the problems, just wants us to listen, and then we get angry. And it's just like, you're constantly bringing me problems and drama. I give you a solution and you won't take my advice. So this is why we need to do the work individually. So for me, that was my biggest thing. I used to come home from a stressful day of business, and if I got into drama or conflict with Tracy, I would blame her. I'd just be like, how dare you? Like, seriously, you're telling me this stuff, I'm giving you some advice, you won't take it, and we just get into these constant fights over and over and over because we were both stressed. Tracy was stressed by looking after the kids. I was stressed by a business day. We come home, and this is why we'd have a drink together. And then we just go, oh, I'm sorry, let's just have a drink. And then that drink just got too far. So we need to really understand and look at ourselves. And for men, we need to be able to switch between our business brain and our home brain. And we need to have strategies in place to be able to transition. That's really important. We need to become better listeners and not try and solve problems at home. Men become very one-dimensional in their relationships. If they've got a million things to solve in business and then they come home, it's an instant problem-solving mentality that they don't even see what's really going on. So that's what I encourage a lot of people to do, is to focus on themselves, to work on themselves, their own triggers, for men to evolve their emotional intelligence, for men to understand the dynamics of the relationship, and to be masters of switching between business mode and home life, because they are completely different. We need to wear two different hats.
But I think it's about communication and communicating. If they're not saying all relationships are perfect, if there are issues, talking at a time when the person can hear you Because if you bring those conversations into the heat of the moment, nobody really gets heard. It just is like replaying old pain. So I guess it's about that, creating that space to have good communication so that you can talk about the hard things also in those moments as well as the good, because relationships, they have so many different facets to them or complications at times, but they can be the most rewarding thing ever in our life. Someone to be on that journey with us and to be there to see the good and the bad and to kind of hold your hand and, make that completeness.
Totally. So we share a framework with all of our clients, the 9 pillars of success, love, and happiness. And typically it's because, same as the journey that I went on, I was all in on business, lifestyle, and finances because it was my job to create the success, to give my family what they needed. But I become obsessed and over energy in that area, and my happiness and my love and relationships were getting affected. But I was blaming everything outside of me because I was doing what I thought that I needed to do, and that was my role. But we live in a different time now. That might have worked in our granddad's era where he goes out and earns the bacon, comes home and gets treated like a king. But there's so much more equality. Our lives are so much more dynamic. They're so much busier than they were 50, 60, 70 years ago. For men, we really need to adjust our energy towards our mental, physical, and spiritual pillars so that we can clear away all of the old baggage, all of the generational programming, all of the stuff that is holding us back from being, I guess, holistic or multidimensional or elevating every area of our life, not just our business success. Because when you work on your mental, physical, and spiritual, that is you as the number one relationship, and it's not selfish. It's putting yourself first. And when you put yourself first because you're doing it for the benefit of the people you love, then the next pillar is love partner, love relationship, and marriage, so that you show up as the best version of yourself for your partner, and you're calmer and you're more present and you're more understanding, so that you can actually be a good listener and not just try and problem solve because you've still got 10 business activities ticking over in your mind, or you still got your phone in your hand when you come home from work, so you're never fully present for your wife and your kids. So doing the deep internal work helps you show up as a better husband, which will evolve your relationships. And then Tracy and I firmly believe that the best parenting skill that you can ever develop is evolving yourself internally and evolving your relationship with your love partner. It's because what your children see and feel and experience from their parents will shape and mold their identity and their beliefs when they grow up to be adults and the type of relationships that they go into.
And I don't even think it's having that perfect relationship or having it viewed as that way, because they can be messy, and they can, as long as I think you're working through things. And again, our kids see us show up every day. We're working on ourselves, and we're also working in our relationship together.
As Tracy said, there is no perfect relationship. We've got quite an intense family. Our family's quite intense. Our children are very confident. They are very driven. They've learnt that from us, right? Tracy and I are very independent. We're growing as individuals. There's a lot of love, a lot of connection, amazing communication, but we also get sick of each other. We are in each other's energy, and it can get quite intense, that we all need to just go away and have our own space. So it's never going to be perfect, but you just need to be more conscious and more aware and understanding the dynamics of the other person in the relationship, but evolving yourself so that you're always showing up as a better version of yourself in your marriage. Because the ripple effect of evolving that relationship, your relationship with your love partner, your wife, your husband, if you can evolve that and grow that, you will evolve and grow any relationship, because it is the hardest. It is the one that deserves the most effort. And if you give it the effort that it desires and not take it for granted, I can guarantee you that every other area of your life will grow and evolve and benefit. It's a powerful, powerful pillar and the most important relationship outside of the relationship that you have internally. Anything else?
No.
Beautiful. So we will share so much more on relationships and our journey and how we help our clients evolve themselves so they can evolve their marriage and their businesses and so forth. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. See ya. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Evolve CEO podcast. If you value the information that is in our podcast, please like, subscribe, and add a review to our podcast page, because it'll help us understand the value that you are receiving, and more importantly, will spread the word of this podcast. Also, share it with your friends and your family. Now, every listener of our podcast gets a free gift from us, and this is our 9 Pillars of Success, Love, and Happiness life assessment. This is the exact same life assessment that our high-level clients, which are CEOs and business leaders, go through on an annual basis so that they can assess and reflect the past 12 months of their life and then plan their desired outcome for the next 12 months of their life. And this is our gift to you for listening in. So please follow the links below and you'll find the link to the assessment page. You'll also find Tracy and my social media links. We would love for you to connect with us on our social media channels. Follow our additional content on there, as we want to provide as much value as we can in the event of helping you create more success, love, and happiness in your life. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next